Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and whatever the hell you are. Today we have come here to announce that the FBI, after a lengthy investigation, will be recommending charges against Luis Antonio Santiago, with the charges of murder, a hate crime, and threatening a former president. Um, Mr. Saint, we will not go over the evidence, but the FBI has received multiple videos of Mr. Santiago in regards to him dropping someone off a building while on the National Guard team. We ask that you please remain quiet, or else Mr. Raw will remove you. Now, I believe the Attorney General has something to say on this issue.
Is everyone else in between. For the record, Bob Fogarty, Attorney General of the United States, on behalf of the United States Department of Justice. In the coming days, we'll start with this. I actually do want to thank the Federal Bureau of Investigation for their lengthy investigation into this matter. We know that this happened fairly recently. However, the investigation from what we have seen, of which we will not be releasing at this time, has been extremely lengthy, detailed, and it shows that the FBI has been more than prepared to undergo an investigation of such length and such complication. Just a little bit of a timeline for everyone as to what happens next. In the coming days, as the courts reopen, specifically the Federal District Court for the District of Colorado, when that reopens, we'll be working with that court, as well as the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local law enforcement agencies, to first capture and arrest Mr. Luis Antonio Santiago. We prefer that he hands himself into local law enforcement. But in the case that he does not hand himself in after a fulfilled court order, we will deploy law enforcement agencies to do so on our behalf. After this, we obviously will work with the courts as much as humanly possible so that we can go ahead with our prosecution. One of the things that I do think needs to be noted is what charges we are seeking at this point in time. And they are different from the charges that we have been recommended by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. After consultation with our criminal division, as well as our HICOM leadership at the Department of Justice, we will be pursuing the charges of a hate crime. That's number one. And number two, capital first-degree murder. These charges will be sought out in the district court. However, I would like to note that we will not be seeking the charge of threatening of a federal official, otherwise known as the threats against the President of the United States. We will not be pursuing those charges at this time. We are aware that there have been conversations and dialogue regarding the potential pardon from the President of the United States against Mr. Luis Antonio Santiago. But we want to make it very clear that the Department of Justice will not be dispersed and will not be we will not be challenged with the threats of a pardon. The Department of Justice will continue our prosecution until that pardon comes our way, if it ever does come our way. I have spoken with the President over the past 24 hours, and I have made it clear that those are my duties as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the United States, and that is what we will be pursuing. Again, let me thank the Federal Bureau of Investigations and our local law enforcement agencies for their cooperation at this time. I would like to answer any questions that the press or the public may have. So if you want to raise your hand, feel free to do so, and I'll bring you up to answer some questions.
We have one question from Chelsea Acacia.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Chelsea Acacia, correspondent from CBS News. I'm just wondering, will this measure be taken for every individual in the position of the person you are currently talking about?
Right now the Department of Justice has a firm policy ensuring that we are prosecuting every individual regardless of their position in the federal or state government. I'm not sure if it was seen, but we also released a few hours ago a memorandum specifically targeting this aspect of saying that prosecutorial duties under every circumstance possible. And so, to answer your question short, yes, we do seek to hold individuals accountable in the same length as we hold Mr. Luis Antonio Santiago. And we also seek to hold individuals in the most impartial and fair way, which is actually why we dropped and refused to prosecute the charge of first-degree murder. Or sorry, not first-degree murder. Why we refused to charge the individual with the threatening of a federal official, otherwise known as the threats against the President of the United States. We don't feel that that is an impartial charge that we can carry out as the Department of Justice. So the capital crime and the hate crime charge are the charges that we are going to file at this time, because we want to make sure that we're holding that precedent very firmly, that we are willing to prosecute regardless of who you are, regardless of what your rank is in this government, and regardless of your circumstance. I hope that answers your question. Do you have any other questions?
I do not. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Other questions? Before I move on to the VC questions, I do want to note that Mr. Rock, the President of the United States, does have a question. So just out of privilege, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to ask a question, Mr. President.
Whoa.
Any other questions that I can answer from the public, excluding Mr. President?
Someone by the name of COVID-19 has a question.
Okay. Go ahead. Does anyone know if the individual is speaking?
Yeah, they're in the chat. Yes.
No,
we cannot hear you.
Here, if I can put you off of the stage if you want to go ahead and rejoin.
No, it looks like we also had the director joining us.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So, first things first, who's being charged again? I wasn't paying. I had to come back, and I didn't hear.
Yeah, so just to briefly summarize, the contents of our press conference thus far, Luis Antonio Santiago is being charged with first-degree murder as well as hate crime charges.
Will he be facing any type of removal from anything if he is charged and convicted?
The Department of Justice at this time doesn't have really any firm ability to remove Mr. Santiago from any of his current positions until the individual has been arrested and or arraigned. So, at this time, pending any type of official judicial action or prosecutorial action, I'm not really at will to answer a question like that at this time. I apologize.
I mean, yeah, I just wanted to understand, like, if he's charged, will he be able to hold any federal offices? Like, because in real life, if he can convicted, you cannot hold any job as an officer or anything.
Yes, so that's one of the things that we'll definitely be seeking out, and trying to find out how we can make, again, as I stated before with one of the questions from CBS with Mrs. Acacia, that we are trying to charge individuals in the most fair and impartial way possible. And if we can ensure that, political means are avoided by any means necessary, then we will.
All right, that is all.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. John Abdu. Go ahead, Mr. Doom.
Hello, good evening, John Doom, FTN News. My question for you is, are you able to discuss when this incident allegedly happened with the public, if you have not done so already?
I feel like that is a question that I will pass over to the FBI if any of their representatives currently. Oh shit. The Attorney General is down.
Shoot her down. Shoot her down. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we will be pausing the press conference after this tragic accident.
I've been shot up.
If you're, okay, I'm muted. If you're just joining us, you are watching a special report from FTN News, Row Nations. I'm John of Doom. In Canton, the FBI has charged Luis Antonio Santiago with charges of first-degree murder and a hate crime, I believe. Let me go back and let me confirm that. Trying to go. First-degree murder and hate crime charges are being alleged against.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen.
We're back.
Oi, off the stage, you escort these folks off the stage.
But Mr. Chief, I'm proud to say that the medical officials have resuscitated me, and I will be attending the press conference via satellite video.
All right, perfect. Rob, please remove Mr. Rock from the podium.
I'm reporting to you live via satellite video at this time.
All right, I believe we had a question from Mr. John of Doom.
Yes, let me restate the question. I asked if you're able to get into where the alleged charges happened, where the alleged incident happened, and the details behind it. You were supposed to hand it to someone, I believe.
Oh yes,
Right.
I was. No, Mr. Palpatine, if I may. This is a question that I feel would be better suited for the FBI, as I'm currently speaking via satellite images.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my good friend, Mr. Chief Palpatine of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Go ahead, Mr. Palpatine.
Thank you. Mr. Doom, this incident occurred within the CBS News headquarters, where Mr. Lewis, a member of the National Guard, detained a former president of the United States and dropped him out the window and unfortunately killing him. This unfortunate event occurred on the 2nd of June after a CBS News broadcast. Does that answer your question, sir?
And I just, if I could just interject before he finishes that.
Okay.
When we say unfortunate, because we want to make sure that we're having an impartial form of bias on this case, we want to change that word unfortunate to just simply murder. Thank you.
So was it on stream or was it after the stream?
This was during the stream, during the last few seconds during the closing. This happened off frame, but we do have a separate video of Mr. Lewis dropping the former president.
You allege that it is a hate crime. Do you have any understanding as to why you are charging Mr. Antonio Santiago with a hate crime?
We are recommending the charge based as to the decision to prosecute. That I will leave that question up to the Attorney General.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and answer that question. When the Department of Justice is considering charges, especially charges that are directly related.
Bob, your mic is really low.
You fucking shitheads. All right. The Department of
Nice
Justice,
face reveal.
I'm reporting via satellite imagery. Thank you very much. When the Department of Justice is considering charges, specifically charges that are directly related to, an individual being discriminated against on the basis of a federally recognized identification, which usually is sex, race, national origin, ethnicity, or disability. We're trying to make sure that when we're prosecuting individuals for a hate crime, that we know for a fact that there was some prejudice that played a role in the act of the crime. And in this case, that was being the murder. We know that just seconds before, but throughout the period with the person who ultimately felt his wrath, we know that the individual was making racist and somewhat remarks that could definitely be interpreted as racist or otherwise adversely representative towards minorities. And so we determined after a lengthy consultation with our criminal division that the prosecution of a hate crime charge would be something that we feel is strong enough to win during a court case and strong enough to win during trial. But it is a charge that we do not prosecute with lightly. I can't even tell you the last time that I remember seeing a hate crime charge on any district court case in the District of Columbia. So, this is a charge that we're definitely going to be experimenting with, and I hope that we don't have to use again in the future. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Doom.
It does. So, based on what I have from you, you think this is a strong enough charge that you think you could win in court?
Yes, that's correct.
Final question for you. What do you think the process will be like going forward? How fast do you expect this case to go through the courts? And are you prepared for any appeal? Since this charge is quite literally, you haven't tried it before in a way, so.
Right now we are kind of, I think it's all kind of depending on how fast the courts reopen and, how fast we can get additional support with the Department of Justice at this time. As you may know, the Federal Bar Association recently released their bar examination process. And so, that's one of the things that is going to make it slightly lower of a time period, because not only are we going to have to get support for the Department of Justice, but we're also going to have to get and ensure that Mr. Santiago has efficient counsel to represent his persons during this time period. And so, we'll be working not only with the courts, but also working with the Federal Bar Association to ensure that Mr. Santiago is afforded his right to have counsel during trial, and also ensuring that we have, this case nailed down enough that we are 100% certain that a prosecutorial win, if you will, is possible. So I think it all just depends on several different factors, but we're hoping that once we get to the submission of our affidavits and to a submission of an actual case through the District of Colorado Court, it is our expectation that, all in all, the trial will probably take somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks after Mr. Santiago's arraignment.
No further questions from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have any more questions from our audience? If not, then I'll turn it over to the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I believe he has some words to say.
Happy Pride, Director.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Mr. Palpatine. Thank you, Mr. Bob, for Fogarty for showing up.
It's Mr. Attorney General, but yes, don't worry.
It's what?
Mr. Attorney General.
Mr. Attorney General. you for being here. Sorry for my late arrival. I had responsibilities in real life. I made the decision after discussing with my command to allow this to be one of many cases that we finally start taking. And as the FBI moves forward, although I do not necessarily encourage crime, we hope to see that CID has more of a job as Boulder continues to grow in activity. Because what we're doing is creating an elaborate system that CID will be able to function with both undercover and on team to record evidence, collect evidence, continue to do interrogations, submit affidavits, etc. And it's kind of a starting process, and we look forward to seeing how this will help Boulder overall for the coming days. So, if you have any questions as far as what the FBI is doing as far as like general policy and things like how we're doing what we're doing, feel free to ask. However, sense. I just want to share that I'm very proud of my command for the work they have done and the system that they have set up.
All right. I believe at this time we are out of presenters and we will be ending the press conference. We thank you all for attending and wish you all a wonderful day.
I do have one thing. I
Oh.
can offer personal / private interviews to any news agencies that wish to speak. So if we have news representatives here, feel free to talk with me after and we can set something up if you wish.
FTN News will be right back. And welcome back to FTN News Row Nations. I'm John of Doom. We were recently covering the FBI conference regarding the announcement of charges against Luis Antonio Santiago, charged with first-degree murder and a hate crime. The alleged incident took place at the CBS News building, apartment, a space down below us. And I'm joined now by Warlockings, who is with us in studio to describe the incident. Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Thanks for having me.
So, for our viewers who were not watching the press conference earlier, could you summarize the charges against Mr. Antonio Santiago and what happened behind it?
Yes, so I'm not completely aware of the exact incident because I myself was not there. However, my chief of staff may be able to speak more on the specific incident. However, what I do know is that we have recorded video evidence of Mr. Santiago not only hanging a black male outside of a window and dropping him. There is also suspect that it could be of hate crime because the nation on that. However, from what I saw, we do have enough grounds to not only definitely prosecute for murder, possibly for hate crime.
If he wants to speak, he can. I have no problem with that.
Mr. Palpatine, would you like to inform us on the, because I do not have enough information to answer.
Sure. As you all know, Mr. Lord Sites is a prominent member in the use of Black Lives Matter community. He had made allegations that the president does not like black people, which seemed to trigger Mr. Santiago to throw him off the building.
So that's where the hate crime charge is from. Are you confident in that part of the charge is succeeding in court, specifically because earlier in the press conference you said this has never been really used before? You can't remember a time when it was ever used.
Well, I will actually correct you here. That was the Attorney General who said that.
Oh, okay.
And as the FBI, we only recommend the charges. We feel that the charges that we recommended were solid, that the remainder goes to the Attorney General to decide what charges to take up, and he has taken up the hate crime charge and the first-degree murder. So we are quite confident that these will succeed in court.
So let's go back to the whole investigation thing. I'm not sure if you're able to describe the whole process, but what led you to believing that these charges were sufficient enough to recommend these charges to the Attorney General? Could you walk us through that process?
Investigation.
I personally will say this, although it's not much of a, as she said, it's not much of a look into the investigative process. The video that was submitted clearly shows, and that is more than enough information needed to charge for murder, regardless of who the person is. And so that alone is enough. It's also could be considered misuse of force.
So now that you have this investigation completed with the recent relaunch of the courts, Boulder, and whatnot, this is not going to be the last time we're going to see charges against any other people in the near future. So do you have the staffing level, enough staff to complete these investigations thoroughly?
Well, John, that's a great question. So, Mr. Santiago's case is not the only case we have started taking. We have several cases currently in the vault that we are investigating that I can't really speak more on at the time. However, as far as staffing, right now my command for more staff. However, my command is very efficient in the way they work and the way they work together, and they're very active, and I am very proud of the way they handle the workload that we have. However, we are going to be opening up the bureau to more agents now that there's smooth sailing, so to say, within the department.
That's understandable. So do you have an ETA for that if it ever happens?
Yes, so our applications are actually open right now. However, we don't have many submissions because the current class is going through FLETC Class 2, so we are expecting to get quite a few applications once Class 2 graduates.
That seems reasonable. So, where would the applications be?
The applications can be found in the applications Discord, as well as just anybody that can DM me. They're allowed to ask for the applications until they're closed. However, we try to keep it going in the department recruiting channel of the NUSA server.
One last question: with the new administration per se, you're kind of back up. You got up on your feet again. Are you confident with the current FBI leadership to continue on with these investigations in the near future because of how chaotic we expect Boulder or DC to be?
So far, everything's going very well, and I'm very confident in the staff that I've chosen. I've been very careful with who I choose, and everybody in my staff is dedicated. Not only dedicated to doing the job that we have there, also we have fun. We're a family. We enjoy it. We enjoy what we do, and I think it's a really good, not only work motivator, but it's also really good work ethic to enjoy what you do. And I see that from every member of my high command. And they're very efficient people that will continue to work efficiently under any circumstance. And I'm very confident in that.
Mr. Warlockings, I believe you're the director of the FBI, correct?
I am the director, yes.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
More FTN News Row Nations in a minute. You are watching FTN News Row Nations. Good evening from Canton. I'm John of Doom, live at the Boulder County Media Center. If you have been watching for the past couple of minutes, you would have known that Luis Antonio Santiago has been charged with a count of, first-degree murder and a hate crime. The charges were accepted by the Attorney General and will be presented via the court to the court as soon as possible. The the alleged incident happened at the CBS News office space just below us here at FTN at the Boulder County Media Center, in which he was. I can't really go into much. I'm going based off of memory here. Let me. Apparently, he hung a black male and dropped him, as well as because of that. Uh, he allegedly said some things towards an African American male, I think, and dropped someone off a from the window, which I believe is where the murder charge happened. It's happened on a CBS News stream, so correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm going based off memory. Let me see if I can find the broadcast. I cannot. It could be in and out within a couple of weeks as terms of the trial. When the courts reopen, again, the bar is currently open, so this might take a couple of days. The first results happen on the 16th. If you're Luis Antonio Santiago, if you're watching this, we would like to have you on to discuss your side of the story. If you'd like to deny anything or talk about the allegations, just shoot me a DM and I can arrange for an interview with you as soon as we can. It was the first press conference that the FBI had at the federal building right near our Boulder HQ. Find the stream and watch it. But that is going to wrap us up for today. We will have another bulletin hopefully sometime soon. There is a DC startup at this moment. We will be there to see if any news arises. But thank you so much for watching FTN News Row Nations live from Canton. I'm John of Doom. Have a great day.